Welcome to the Beyond You podcast, where we have real conversations about healing, trusting yourself again, and building the kind of relationships that actually feel good. I'm Samantha, and if you've ever felt like you're just going through the motions, like you're doing all the right things but still feeling disconnected, you're in the right place. Because here we go beyond the surface, beyond the hurt, beyond the patterns that keep you stuck. So take a deep breath, get comfortable, and let's get into it. Welcome back to the Beyond You podcast. I'm your host, Samantha, and today we are going deep into talking about friendship audits. Yes, you heard that right, because sometimes the hardest part of growing isn't just healing from romantic relationships, it's realizing that some friendships need to be evaluated too. And you probably are thinking some friendships now that possibly could be evaluated, and so we're going to go deep into that. So, I got to start this episode by just sharing something personal because a lot of times, I go by things that I've hearing through sessions that seem to be coming up recently and just through my own life experiences as well. Because throughout my journey, I feel like I've had two major friendship transitions that really taught me about what authentic connections mean. Because back before, this was a while ago, I had this friendship that I thought would last just forever because we were talking for so long and just really connecting, and something shifted, right? And I remember this was like back in my 20s. And it was interesting because something shifted the closer we got. It was like the closer we got, the meaner this person would become. It was like watching someone slowly transform from a friend into, honestly, sometimes it felt like an opponent. Like the closer that we would talk or connect, it's just, I don't know if she just felt comfortable with being rude and nasty and mean. But if we didn't talk for a while and it was just very surface level, she was fine. So that experience taught me young that sometimes the length of a friendship doesn't justify its continuation. Like, I want you to understand that friendships are supposed to feel like home, a place where you can be yourself, let your guard down, and know that you're supported. But what happens when that home starts to feel more like a place you don't belong anymore? And I'll be real with you, one of the hardest parts of my healing journey wasn't just setting boundaries with romantic relationships. It was learning how to let go of friendships that no longer served me, which tend to hurt more, which is wild, right? Like our friendships that we break up with tend to hurt more than our actual romantic relationships. And it was learning how to let go of friendships that no longer served me, because understand that as a former people pleaser here, I used to think that friendships should last just forever, like a lot of us do. That as someone had been in my life for years, I owe them something. But the truth is, not every friendship is meant to come with you into every season of your life. So today we're doing the friendship audit, because when you're healing, growing, and becoming more of yourself, your friendship should reflect that and not hold you back at all. But when I went through another friendship transition, that was different, more subtle, but just as important, because on the surface, everything looked fine. We showed up for each other, checked all the friendship boxes, but I don't know if you ever had this feeling, but that something just feels off, right? It took me a while to put my finger on it, but here's what I realized. The friendship had become a lot of times transactional, and I'll go a little bit into that more deeper later in the episode. It wasn't about who we were, but it was more about what you could do for another person. And transactional relationships, you'll realize that because what happens is I get what I need from it, you get what you need, and you just kind of keep it kind of moving, right? When we want to try to get into spaces in any type of relationship where you're still you, I'm still me, but a relationship is its own identity, right? That both people are putting into. And so understand that every interaction with this person felt like a balance sheet of favors and returns. And while there's nothing wrong with friends supporting each other, when that becomes a foundation instead of genuine connection, right? We want to be able to do stuff. I was talking to a client earlier today. We want to be able to do stuff out of love, not out of obligation. Like that is the biggest goal here. But I need you to be able to pause and reflect if this does happen to you. You're thinking of any friendships that does happen to, where it feels more like it's out of obligation because maybe of the time you spent together, but not as it's just kind of genuine connection, genuine love that's there for, the other person. So it wasn't that either in this friendship, it wasn't that either of us were right or wrong. We just had different views of what friendship meant, right? So for me, and I think deciding for you what that means, I was craving more authentic connection. While this friendship stayed in the realm of mutual utility, it, you know what? Sometimes that's okay for certain relationships in your life. But for a core friendship, I know for me, like I enjoy more when it comes to my friendships. And so a lot of times we want to think about what I call the friendship mirror because our friendships reflect back to us not just who we are, but who we're becoming. And sometimes what we see in that reflection needs a real good, closer look to it. So here are some reflections that I know I had to face and something that you might want to think about when it comes to your own connections. I need to understand, like, why was I accepting less than genuine connections if that's something that's important to me? Or I also had to think about when did I start confusing activity for authenticity in this kind of transactional spaces? And how many of my friendships were based on who I truly am versus what I could offer? Right? And I had to really just kind of sit back and think on what that was like and feel like. And it definitely is a transition. And my last question for myself was, why was I afraid to require more from my friendships? And understand that I really want you to be able to get real with yourself here, because let's talk about those friendships that always have you questioning, do I actually want to be here? Those friendships where you feel exhausted but you can't quite explain why, because as you've seen, I've been there, right? And so I forgot who mentioned it in an episode that I seen before. I think it was like a shorts or something like that. They talked about ambivalent friendships, and they talked about on how with ambivalent friendships you're just kind of questioning constantly, like, is this a good friendship for me? And you're always like, does it feel like I want to hang out with him? Do I? Like, how do I feel with him? It just gives this kind of exhausting feeling when it comes to those friendships. And I had to think about that because those are the most exhausting ones. Nothing's really wrong, but you don't really know why you're exhausted afterwards. And so, like a couple of years ago, I had a friendship that, looking back, was what I would call an ambivalent friendship. Like every time we hung out, I felt torn. Like I was supposed to be there, but something in me kept questioning if this was actually the kind of friendship I wanted. And because I didn't trust myself at the time, I kept leaving and coming back to the friendship because I just wasn't sure. It wasn't something that the person did. It just was this feeling that just did, like we talked about earlier, that just felt off. And then there were sometimes I was convincing myself that maybe this time you'll feel different. And I know you guys had those moments, just we just don't allow ourselves to really take in just what we're seeing at that time. But the things it never did, I just always felt myself questioning, like, are we friends? Is it growing? Is it not? And that's what finally made me realize, if a friendship constantly makes you second guess yourself, it's already giving you the answer. So signs of a draining friendship: you feel exhausted or emotionally drained after hanging out. And no, this doesn't mean that they're maybe, cussing at you or doing something that's people wouldn't find appealing to it just could be a feeling that you're having and you don't understand why, but there's a reason why you feel exhausted after that, right? And also, you constantly question if you want to be around them. Like, there's these answers, like I was talking about earlier, of like, do I want to be here? Do I not? I mean, it was cool and okay, but I kind of don't want to see the person again. Or it's just so many questions that come up afterwards. The next, you leave interactions feeling worse, not better. Like really paying attention to how you feel, and I talk about that in previous episodes, like really paying attention to interactions and on how you feel when you just leave somebody. And also, you feel like you have to perform rather than just be, right? And you want spaces where you just can be you. And I think that's what's really important, just whether it's friendships, whether it's relationships, family, you want to be able to spaces where you can just be. So now let's get kind of practical here, because if you've been feeling that nudge, that quiet whisper that something in your friendship needs to shift, I want to give you some real tools to work with. So get something to write with, because we're about to do what I call a friendship energy check. This isn't about judging your friends. It's about getting honest about how these relationships are affecting your peace. So here are the questions I had to ask myself, and I'm inviting you to do the same. Remember, you need to have like your notebook and um, paper and pencil or pen ready, or just kind of think about it in your head if you don't have the space to do that. But I just really want just an overview on what this looks like for you. So I want you to think about, like, after you spend time with your friend, do you feel energized or exhausted? How about, can you be your full self, or are you editing? Are you breathing easier or holding your breath? Right? And taking the time to answer these questions, if you need to pause this, feel free. But or just kind of think about that for yourself. Okay? Because I need you to be able to reflect and think about the friendships in your life. Right? Really thinking, do you feel energized after seeing them, or do you feel relieved when it's over? So, as we continue, just signs that need your attention. Right? The preparation factor. Before you are seeing a friendship, are you thinking about what to share? Do you feel pressure to come with updates worthy of their time? Right? Are you filtering your real feelings to maintain peace? Like, really think about, as you go into this space with this friend, is this what you're doing? Are you preparing to speak to somebody, to speak to your friend, which can feel like a lot. It can feel exhausting. Next, I want you to think about just the authenticity check, right? So, can you share a win without adding, but I'm still working on blank, right? Do you feel safe sharing struggles? And lastly, is vulnerability met with presence or problem solving? So definitely being able to check your authenticity when it comes to the friendships, and then just want you to pay attention to those signs and see what comes out to you, see what friends speak to you. And then lastly, I want you to do the energy exchange. Think about, are your interactions giving you life or draining it? Next, I want you to think about, does the friendship feel like a soft place to land or another performance stage? And then lastly, are you showing up out of joy or obligation, like we mentioned earlier? If you want to put joy, showing up out of love or obligation, out of joy or obligation, like really allowing yourself to think about that. Because here's something nobody talks about. Sometimes the hardest friendships to evaluate are the ones that look perfect on paper. The ones you've known each other forever, you're in the same industry, everyone thinks your friendship goals. But let me tell you something I learned the hard way. Just because a friendship photographs well doesn't mean it feels good. Now, this is where it gets nuanced, because not every friendship challenge means it's time to part ways. Sometimes you're just in a growth phase. And so I want to be able to get you to understand, and here's how to tell the difference. So when you're in a growth phase, this looks like temporary difference, temporary distance due to life changes. It could also be something of open conversations about evolving needs. Right? Growth phases can look like mutual effort to reconnect, even if it feels awkward. Right? And it also can look like space for both people to evolve, right? That's what that growth phase looks like. Like, you still allow someone to be themselves, but you realize that you're in this kind of growth period. But when it comes to pattern problems, this can look like consistent drain on your energy. It could look like one-sided effort in maintaining connection, or friendship feels like a performance, or a pattern could look like success or growth creates tension. So I want you to know that with growth, you're in the spirit of just like allowing the person to be and growing. But pattern problems, no, I want you to look at somebody's patterns and how they're showing up for you. This is going to look like what I mentioned before. Just as every time you see this person, or majority of the time you see this person, these are the patterns that happen, and think about if one of those signs happen for yourself. And I understand, because I remember feeling guilty about stepping back from a friendship that looked ideal on the surface. We support each other through major milestones, helped each other grow in our careers, shared resources and opportunities. But beneath that perfect exterior, I was exhausted after every interaction. What looked like mutual support had become a draining cycle of keeping score and measuring worth through what we could do for each other. So I wanted to get into, so what does a healthy, aligned, soul nourishing friendship actually feel like? And I had to learn this over time because for a while I didn't even know what I was looking for. I just knew what I didn't want anymore. And for me, a safe and fulfilling friendship is one where I don't feel like I have to perform, where I can just be. It's a friendship where we both show up as our full selves. No pretending, no walking on eggshells. I've also learned from my own friends on what friendship looks like. It's not just the fun times, it's showing up for each other in all seasons of life. So, here are some green flags of a healthy friendship. You feel seen for who you are, not just what you do. Your boundaries are respected without that tension. You can communicate honestly, and even when there's conflict, the love is still consistent. And you leave interactions feeling energized, supported, and at peace. So think about the friendships that make you feel safe and what do those relationships have in common for you? And I want you to be able to write that down or just kind of take some time to think about it. Now, here's the part that we don't talk about enough as well. How do you actually let go of a friendship that's no longer serving you? Because we talk a lot about healing from romantic breakups, but nobody prepares you for how much it hurts to outgrow a friendship. So, and I know for me that I've had to walk away from friendships that on paper weren't bad, like I mentioned. And the hardest part for me wasn't even the fact of the leaving, it was accepting that some friendships aren't meant to be lifelong. And sometimes they were meant for who you were, not who you're becoming. So, how do you know it's time to let go? Which I kind of talked about before. You feel drained. The friendship is based more on history than alignment. There's no real effort or reciprocity. It only works when you're only one reaching out. And you just kind of feel like the old version of yourself. And I think another important question to ask yourself is, if I met this person today, would I still choose them as a friend? And those are really just kind of some things to think about. So I want you to be able to navigate this friendship changes with grace. Okay, so I get that you realize, it isn't aligned anymore if you're in that space. Now what, right? Do you just ghost them? Have a whole breakup conversation? Like, what's the move? And there's a couple different ones you can do. Right, there's some people where it needs to be just a slow fade. Sometimes a friendship naturally drifts, and that's okay. Not every ending needs closure. I've had places where it just slowly faded away and just didn't, really talk anymore. Sometimes I've done this one as well, where we've done like just the honest talk, right? What felt like a breakup conversation. It felt weird when the first time I did it. It felt like I was breaking up with a person, but it can feel exhausting at first trying to think about what to say. But if this honest talk, if you feel called to do this, you can have a conversation. And for me, I started off with like, hey, I've been feeling a shift in our friendship, and I want to be honest about where I'm at. And I kind of gave an explanation on the things I felt like I went wrong and how I don't feel like it aligns with me and who I'm becoming anymore, which was really hard on the other person. And lastly, you can also do the boundary shift. If you're not ready to fully let go, you can try setting stronger boundaries and see how they respond. You could say something of, I don't like when we talk about that, or I don't agree with what you're saying, and I don't really want to discuss it anymore. You can be able to use different things to kind of help you with the boundary shift part if you want to have this type of conversation as far as with that. But I understand what helped me let go without guilt. I had to remind myself letting go isn't about rejection or rejecting people. It's about honoring my peace. So I want you to think about what's one thing you need to accept about a friendship in your life right now. And I want to be able to create this challenge for you. Hey, take a moment this week to do your own friendship audit if you didn't do it with me right now today. Ask yourself, which friendships nourish me? Which friendships drain me? And where do I need to create space for new aligned connections? Okay, and so before we wrap up on our friendship audit conversation, I want to give you some practical tools you can start using right now to protect your peace while building authentic connections. And understand that we have spaces where you can be able to have authentic connections, whether it's a Beyond You collective or in our comments in the community. But right now, I want to give you some strategies you can start today, right? Maybe some daily peace practices. It's taking a moment each morning to check in with yourself before engaging with others and how you feel, so to be clear on how you want to show up. Also, set clear energy boundaries for different relationships in your life, okay? And also have a quick reset techniques ready for challenging moments. So also know that there is kind of relationship regulation tools as well that you can be able to do as well. Really noticing when your energy dips in certain conversations, practice saying, let me think about that instead of immediate yeses. Honor your intuition when something feels off. And I want you to be able to start setting small boundaries for yourself as well. So remember that you deserve relationships that honor your growth, peace that lasts, and connections that celebrate your authentic self. And just know this is Samantha reminding you that going beyond means choosing yourself, your peace, and your truth. You can connect with me on TikTok at Moving Beyond You and my website at movingbeyondyou.org, and on the social media to daily inspiration, also my YouTube as well at Moving Beyond You, but it's under my name, Samantha Saunders. So I love being able to give you strategies and authentic conversations about this journey, and I cannot wait to talk to you next week. Have a good week.